Okay, welcome to some fun with math. Here I wanted to look at linear equations in one variable. Essentially what that means is that we only have one unknown. Okay, so those equations are typically in the form ax plus b, where x is going to be your variable and then a and b would be your constants, or represented by numbers. Now when we're solving these linear equations, what you have to do is you have to be able to isolate that variable, and sometimes we have to use order of operations in order to get that variable completely by itself. Okay, so for this first example here, notice I have an x on both sides of my equation, so I need to get that to be alone. On this left hand side, the first thing that I need to do is called distribute. So I'm going to distribute this 3 into my parentheses here. When I do that, remember distribute is essentially multiplication. So this becomes 3 times your 5x plus 3 times your 2. And then if I look across, I have this negative outside, and that has to be distributed. So I need to distribute that through this back parentheses here. Remember, any negative that you see is essentially the same as having -1. So you would multiply that negative through. So here, this would end up being 5 minus x. And then negative and negative is positive, so this becomes plus 3. Back on the left-hand side, we need to finish the multiplication. 3 times 5 is going to give you 15x. 3 times 2 gives you plus 6. And then on the other side, we need to combine our terms. So I have this 5 and this 3, and I need to combine them together. 5 plus 3 gives you 8 minus x. Now at this point, I usually like to make a choice. I personally like to keep my variables positive. So I would take this x term here and I would move it across my equal sign. Because it is negative, in order to move it, says that I'm going to add it across the equal sign, which means at the same time I need to take this 6 here and I need to move it across the equal sign going the other direction. Since the 6 is positive, in order to move it, says I have to subtract. So here I'm going to have 15 plus an x is going to give me 16x. And then I'm going to have 8 minus 6 is going to leave me with 2. Now the last thing I need to do is I need to get that 16. So I'm going to divide the whole thing by 16, which is going to end up with giving me that x is equal to 2 over 16. Furthermore, we need to reduce. Therefore, that 2 over 16 is going to simplify down to 1 over 8. Okay. Now, what happens if we are asked to do the same thing, but we start with fractions first? Well, the easiest thing we need to do is get rid of the fraction. You're going to do that by multiplying your entire equation here by that least common multiple. So here the trick is we have to look at the denominators. I have a 3 and I have a 4. So when I'm looking at a least common multiple, I'm looking at what is common between 3 and 4. Well, one easy way to figure that out is to take them and multiply them together. And this gives you 12. Now, this value is either going to be the smallest or it's just going to be a value in common. In this case, because of 3 and 4, 12 ends up being the least common, so it fits the bill. Which means I'm going to take this entire equation and multiply it by 12. Okay, so we're going to have 12 times the whole thing, so negative 2/3 x plus 5 is that negative 3/4 x minus 7. So when I multiply it, what it means is that this 12 has to go to every part of my equation. all 4 places, or all places, depending on how many you have. So here I'm going to end up with 12 times my negative 2/3 x plus 12 times 5 equals 12 times negative 3/4 x minus 12 times 7. Okay. So here, when I'm looking at 12 over 3, one of the things I notice is that these can cancel. So the 12 and 3 cancel, leaves a 1 on the bottom and changes this to a 4. And then 12 times 5 I can multiply as normal, but now I have 12 over 4, so again these cancel. Leaves this being a 1, and this becomes a 3, and then again I can multiply 12 and 7. So I have to go ahead and be able to do my multiplication. So remember, I'm going to go straight across. This first one here, I've got 4 times a negative 2. So I've got 4 times negative 2, which is going to give me a negative 8. So this is a negative 8x. And then I have 12 times 5, which is going to give me a positive 60. And then I have 3 times a negative 3. So this is going to be negative 9x. And then negative 12 and 7 gives me a negative 84. Again, I have to decide which way I want to move, so I'm going to look very carefully. And since I would like my variables to be positive, I would take this 9x right here, and I would move it across the equal sign. Since it is negative, to move it says I have to add. And since I'm going to move the x, then that automatically means I have to move my constant going the other way. Since it's positive, to move it says I have to subtract. So in doing that, what ends up happening is I end up having my 8x plus a 9x is equal to negative 84 minus 60. So negative 8 plus 9 is going to leave me with a positive, so this just becomes an x. And then I have negative 84 minus 60. So when I subtract those, you end up with negative 144. And this would be the answer we're looking for. Okay. So there you have it. 2 examples of working with linear equations, one fraction, one not, and being able to isolate that variable x. So if you have any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you next time.